Welcome to the MMHP in the 989, channeling all styles and eras of Michigan music history. Recorded live from the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located inside the Bay County Historical Museum.
From the city by the bay.
Featuring Dr. J, Fred Reif, Mr. Mike, and your host, Scott Baker. Brought to you by the 989 Podcast Network and the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame, located at the Bay County Historical Society Museum at 321 Washington Avenue, Bay City, Michigan.
Here we are at the Michigan Rock Legends Hall of Fame here in Bay City, Michigan, broadcasting in the end of February on a beautiful over 50-degree day here on the second warmest winter on Michigan record here. And Gary lined up today's show with someone, which is Dr. J, for those of you keeping track. Dr. J, Mr. Mike, and Sir Fred are all in the house. And Gary lined up a guy that we've been listening about for a long time, and glad he made it all the way up here. Mr. Mel Kanar is here. How you doing, Mel?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming here. And Gary's going to fire off stuff, and Freddie's our blues scholar and legend of the Detroit stuff, so I'm sure he's got a million things for you too, but I'm looking forward to popping in here and asking a few questions myself.
Well, I hope my memory bank works as good as the graciousness of you guys.
Well, we got to dig out that envelope, and we'll see how it goes. You know?
Not too bad for a guy almost 84.
All right.
Here we are. Well, Mel, let's just start at the start here. You were born in Detroit?
Born and raised in Detroit.
Okay, and maybe you tell us a little bit about your youth, because I know you were working in a beer and liquor store. How did that happen? You're a young guy, and how did you get that job?
Well, just a little bit before that, when I was a paper boy for the Detroit Free Press final edition that came out at 7 o'clock at night, and sometimes in Michigan we'd have some heavy snows, and believe me, you didn't on your bicycle delivering and throwing papers on front porches. You had to walk, all right? But being here and looking at the museum, I realized the very first record I ever bought at 12 years of age with my paper money from a record rack in Dick's drugstore was Bill Haley's Shake, Rattle, and Roll. And I think I almost wore that 78 record out. I played that constantly because I could still hear my mother and my father screaming at me, "Turn that darn thing down, turn it down." So that's probably my first start of music, loving, and always loved music, all kinds of music. And then I had to drop out of school. My parents got divorced. I was about 11 years of age, and it was very difficult. The money was always a problem, always a problem. And I've worked my whole life. And I dropped out of school, and my uncle got me a job on Skid Row, Michigan Avenue, not too far from the Detroit Tiger Stadium, and through the nicest guy in the world, may his soul rest in peace, Archie Keela was his name, in a beer and wine liquor store on 824 Michigan Avenue, Michigan and 3rd. Upstairs were the flop houses. There was tons of bars, pawn shops, you name it. And it was a great education for me.
I remember the first time I went, well, it was called Briggs Stadium at that time.
Correct.
First time my dad took me to a Tiger game, we walked through Skid Row.
Right. You go right down Michigan Avenue.
Right.
You go right to and past Trumbull, and there you are, Trumbull and Michigan Avenue. You got Tiger Stadium or Briggs Stadium.
And how did you get a job? Because you're a pretty young guy in a
I wasn't even 18 years of age, and to sell liquor,
Yeah.
you had to be 18 years of age. But there were so many police around. They came to the store all the time. Archie said, no problem. We didn't even have an alarm system or a fancy lock. We had some kind of little lock on the front door. They were always there. And they said, they ain't going to bother you because you're underage. He said, so I worked from 5 in the afternoon to 2 o'clock in the morning. Believe me, I saw a lot. That was an education. Believe me, you ain't going to get at any university today. And by the time you cleaned up and you rotated the beer and everything else, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, where's the kid 17 years of age? And they go at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had a room that I rented. It was probably the size of one of my walk-in closets in my house. And it was very, very difficult. And I still had a lot of great friends from school, and I still communicated, but I didn't have much of a life. And then one of my best friends, who I just lost last October, he called me. He said, "Hey, my Uncle Harvey is looking for you. Here's his phone number. Call him at his house. He's looking for you." So I called him, and I knew him well. And he said, "Mel, I'm opening up a record distributor on Woodward Avenue, where all the record distributors were, about 3 stores away from the Orchestra Hall, the Max today, the old Paradise at one time, and I want you to come down and talk to me." So, I mean, I had my 1946 DeSoto with fluid drive, and didn't move too fast, but it was, if you hit it, it would be like hitting a bomb. And I drove down and he said, "Well, I'm opening up this distributing company called Aurora Distributing, and I need somebody for shipping and receiving." And I said, "Harvey, that sounds great." He says, "Now, it's 9 to 5. You have no Saturdays or no Sundays." And I said, "I didn't know anything about shipping." He says, "Don't worry, I'll teach you. I'll teach you." And that was great. So it wasn't quite as much money as I was making at $12 a day at the beer and wine and liquor store. So I said to Archie, "Can you work me in on the weekends?" He said, "Well, Evelyn," that was her name, God bless, I can remember her name, "she doesn't want to work Saturdays. So you come in at 7 in the morning and you work till 5 in the afternoon shift. And on Sundays, because of the liquor laws, you can work from 12 to 5 because we didn't open before 12 o'clock. I said, "Well, good." So between the two of them, I did real well. And all of a sudden, we started getting all these little independent labels like VJ and Fire and Fury and some small individual. Most of them were owned by blacks, and most of them had black artists in there. So one day while I was working in the back room, because all the record shops would call, there was a service that would deliver records all over the state, even Bay City here. I remember Dearborn Music and all over. They had a service where they would drop off to the various record shops, or the small record shops in the Detroit area, when we had record shops, would stop by, come up to the front counter and say, "I need a box of this, a box of that," because we were a distribution company. And one day, while I was in the back room, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, one of the part owner, only owned 10% of Aurora Distributors, was a gentleman named Barney Ailes, who became the president of Motown Records. And he said to me, "Mel, you got a sport jacket and a nice shirt and tie and a pair of pants." He said, "You can have it hanging here, because if I get a new record or something to run it out to CKLW, which is you have to go through the tunnel to go to Windsor, or WXYZ or one of the radio stations, or if somebody comes in town," I was his go for. That's basically what I was. But with a nice sport jacket and tie, "I'll teach you a little bit about the promotion business and you'll meet somebody." Well, I was all of 18 years of age. That sounded exciting to me.
What year is this again?
Oh, probably 1959, about 1959.
Now, who brought in the distribution, all that stuff? Who lined all that music up that came to your place?
The word gets around when we start getting some hits, and then one manufacturer would say, "Hey, who's your guy in Detroit? Who's can do your distribution in Detroit?"
He called your uncle? And
he would call, well, not my uncle, but my friend's uncle, right?
Yeah,
and he would call him up, and I say, "Yeah, okay." So we started off with VJ and Fire and Fury, because we had Wilbur Harrison and Bobby Marchand and all these other ones. And we started getting more and more labels. The biggest label we had at that time was Epic Records, which was part of Columbia. Mm-hmm. And they had Roy Hamilton and Tony Orlando and a few others. And started getting, now Barney became very, very, very strong with Barry eventually left Aurora Distributors. And then Harvey said to me, "We're taking you out of the back room. We're going to make you the promotion man now." I said, I'm for it. I didn't have to work, and it gave me a little bit of a raise. And that was exciting to me. So I wore a nice suit, shirt, tie, and that's how I started in the promotion
And
business.
you're basically under 21 years.
Under 21 years
Yeah,
of
that's
age.
incredible.
You must have had a set of pipes on you from lifting all those records. Those are heavy.
Let's say most of my upper is gone down to my lower. Okay.
So you worked with some of the very early Motown artists when they first started. Did you do any promotion for Marv Johnson?
Yes. Oh, Marv Johnson was on ABC, if I'm not mistaken.
United Artists.
United Artists, right. United Artists. No, because we didn't handle the United Artists, but I knew Marv Johnson real well because he would come to do the record hops and do like Ernie Durham's show and everything else. And I knew him real well. And him being a Detroiter, they hung around the various bars, and especially because of Ernie Durham, who was on WJLB, and did the big record hop they had every Friday night and Sunday afternoon. And he had a tremendous listening audience, and terrific guy. He would come there and we would lip sync. They had a big stage, and they'd come up there and they put on a lip sync, and they would hang out. There was the Driftwood Lounge next door, which had, what was his name? Levi Mann. Oh my God. Levi Mann had a live band, and all the greats would play the Driftwood Lounge, which is part of, of this thing. And they had live music, and they had food, and they had booze, but the part where Ernie Durham did his show that probably would hold about 750 kids, because he would say on Friday night you had to be over 17 years of age to get in. So he would say, "Baby, don't goof, bring your age proof. And how can you holler about $1? Because that's all it costs you to get in." On Sunday you only had to be 15, but he would say, "Don't goof, okay? Remember, it's only $1 and you can't holler about $1." Okay? So he had this big audience, the 20 grand, and downstairs there was a bowling alley, and all the great artists would come there. They all stayed at the Gotham Hotel from out of town, which was an all-black hotel on John R. And they would all appear there, and they'd come in there, and there'd be a lineup. And he would try to know who Marv Johnson's going to be at the show, or Nathaniel Mayer, or whoever was in town, or if they were at the Driftwood Lounge, like Clyde McFadder or Sam Cooke, they come over and they lip sync their latest, because you wanted to be good to the disc jockeys. They want you, get airplay.
Yeah, I have one of the things I found real interesting. It was at Adam White that is.
Yes.
He wrote that, that was kind of like the new payola. That instead of paying the disc jockey to play music, you would have the artists come to their dances and so on and make appearances, and as the payoff they would promote the records, right?
When payola was blown up by Ed McKenzie from WJBK, he was Jack the Bellboy, and he blew the whistle on the payola. I wasn't really involved in the payola. I was still working in the back room. But a lot of disc jockeys, I don't even want to mention their names, were fired or let go because that's the way you were compensated.
Right, you were being paid money.
Yeah, they were paid by the radio stations.
The payola name
the
came
old story,
from, right?
The horse wins the race, never forget the jockey. Okay? So that's how things were done. So when that all blew up, and a lot of them left the radio business or went on to other radio stations because of the FCC, so many things changed. Okay, I'll give you one little story. The FCC made a ruling you could only play one song per label. So if you were Columbia Records with all the big hits they have, and you had Johnny Mathis or Tony Bennett, or you could only play one song per hour. How do you think we came up with all those various labels? But now, there's many ways to slice up the fish here.
Well, yeah, Barry Gordy is a prime example.
Yeah, look, if you go down Motown.
Tamla, Motown,
Gordy, all the
soul,
Joblit. I mean, it had all these
Miracle.
So it was kind of my idea when I said to him, I said, hey, apparently we're just going to have more labels.
Yeah,
that's all.
Right.
So then it was favors. All the disc jockeys, because when they start doing the Robin Seymour and early Bud Davies on CKLW, television became big, but because of Dick Clark, and everybody had local television shows. So they did record hops. Everybody, I don't care if it was a Catholic church or a hall or schools or dances, they did record hops. So what was a nice thing to do in a record hop? Mel, can you bring me the Spinners? Mel, can you bring me the Temptations? Mel, can you do this? What am I going to say? No. He's the guy along when they used to have the meetings, so what new records they're going to put on. He was a strong link in the wheel. So every Friday night and Saturday night, I was driving from Gibraltar, Michigan, to God knows Wall Lake, Michigan. Hopefully I could make it there so we can do, lip sync to the record. So I carried the record and carried the artist, and we would go around, and that would seem to be every Friday and Saturday night. I was doing record hops or shows.
Yeah.
I can tell you a lot of stories about
Yeah,
that.
you had, one thing in the blog was you driving Mary Wells, who was only 17 years old when she had her first
Bye Bye
R&B
Baby.
hit. Yeah, Bye Bye Baby. And you promoted that record,
Yes.
I'm assuming, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And, that must have been something, driving her around to various dances. There would be sometimes more than one in a night that you would have to take her?
No, more than one, sometimes three. And there
Okay.
always happened to be the east side to the west side, or going all the way down to the Ohio border or some sort. And I didn't realize that at that time, and whoever thought that Motown would be the monster that they grew into? Nobody ever thought about that. For me, it was fancy cars and pretty girls, and it was an exciting business to be in. But
Right.
for me, it was like work. But I think I mentioned when we had a previous conversation, I had a great R&B ear. I could really hear R&B. In fact, one of the records that was sent to me when I was hot stuff in the promotion business from a company out in California, I get this record. The guy calls me up. He says, Mel, we know you're the guy that can get this record player. This record is starting to really happen in California. Maybe you can listen to it and do something for me. So we agreed upon our price, and I played this thing, and I said, oh, God, I'm never going to get this thing played. Angel Baby, Rosie and the Originals. God, I remember taking it to Dick Purton, and he said, this is the worst piece of junk I've ever heard. Bob Gree said, she's off key. She can't even carry a tune. I said, you got to do me a favor. The record's starting to sell. I can't pick these things. Play it. The thing, they're not all home runs, Babe Ruth, and you can't pick them all.
Yeah.
But that was not where my ear was. My ear was for R&B. If I heard an R&B, I saw what the potential, like, Oh, What a Night by the Dells, or Jerry Butler, or whatever.
I can tell you, I was in high school when Angel Baby came out, and it was such a popular song for the slow dance. That's where it came, even though the sax was a little out of tune.
Oh God!
I mean,
it was cut in a garage. I'm
know
telling
it.
you, cut in a garage.
But that's, to me, sort of is the magic about a lot of the early rock and roll songs, is that there were sometimes mistakes and so on, but there was something about it, had a sort of a soulfulness to it that was very appealing. Yeah, that turned out to be, like you said, maybe the least likely big hit.
Yeah, I had a couple of them. Last Kiss, okay. oh, where can my be? I couldn't hear that. But I think I can get it played. Okay, so hey, it was a paycheck for me, and that turned out to be a big hit. Also, how about little GTO? Little GTO, what is this? Okay, you see, they're not all home runs.
Yeah.
but you do the best you can.
Well, like
Do you-
yeah, go ahead, Fred.
Do you know who did Last Date? What's his name?
Last Kiss, you mean?
Or Last Kiss?
Yes.
J. Frank Wilson.
That's right.
Okay, did you ever see him? Meet
No.
him?
No,
Well,
I never met
there
Rosie
was. I
either.
used to own a record shop for a number of years, and there was this guy came in, and he said, "I'm J. Frank Wilson," and there's no. I this is before the internet, so I couldn't Google him or anything. So I went to the library and got the album because I didn't have it in the store. And there's no picture of him. There was no picture of him anywhere. So I never knew if this guy was telling me the truth or not.
Well, he had a show at the Green Hut. It was not J. Frank Wilson, but
Okay, well,
he passed himself off as
Okay.
J. Frank Wilson. But that song too, right in the middle of Beatlemania, that this song, which is kind of like a throwback to the early '60s, the teen tragedy song, the car crash, and it was. You did a wonderful job. Of
Pearl
promoting
Jam
that.
ended up taking that back up for a round.
Exactly, you had a big hit with it.
Yeah.
What was that?
The band Pearl Jam in
yeah.
the late 90s, early aughts
Late
took
90s.
that for a spin.
did you ever work with Diamond Jim, that label out of Detroit?
I mean, I wasn't even aware of that label, Diamond
Okay.
Jim.
Well, a Saginaw group was on it, EJ and the Echoes, and all their record release parties was at the 20 grand.
Really?
Because Diamond Jim was in the business, and that's where all the Motown
Well, that was a
acts
hopping
and-
place.
Right.
I'll tell you a story. You're talking 20 grand. I had Tony Orlando, and then they had the Driftwood Lounge, and then the owner, two guys owned it, said to Tony, would you come in and sing with Levi Mann and the band? It's, you're going to be here for a while. Because he had Halfway to Paradise and then Bless You, I brought him back. And he said, yeah, I'll be glad to do it. He said, Mel, can you get me a couple of gals to be my backup singers? I need to work with them a little bit, and I be some backup singer. I'm going to do some other stuff then, Halfway to Paradise or whatever. I said, yeah. And he reminded me of the story. And when I was just, Neil forgot to say this. Who my backup singers were? The Supremes. Before they had any hits, because they had 4 dogs before they hit. Okay, I got them the Supremes. I said, would do me a favor. You're going to be here working on it. Would you come next door and be the backup singer? I spent a little time with Tony Orlando and be the back. He reminded me of that.
Oh my gosh,
That's pretty funny, amazing.
Well, there were a lot of connections that came out of that blog article as well at Aurora. That Ronnie White of the Miracles,
Yes,
his wife Lynn,
Lynn,
worked
gorgeous
there.
girl. Oh, she was gorgeous. Gorgeous on the outside, gorgeous on the inside. And she was going to Ronnie White with Ronnie, and he was one of the Miracles. Ronnie White brought Stevie Wonder to Motown, to Barry. And Barry said, I don't know. I like his harmonica playing. But, he's 11 years of age. And his voice is not whatever. So he said to, I don't remember who produced him, maybe it was Williams, whatever. He said, okay, let's give him a 1-year contract. And we'll release something out for him. And we only got a marriage for 1 year. And if you don't happen, goodbye. Okay, 12 years of age. And of course, what did he come out with? Fingertips Part 1, then Fingertips Part 2, and then all the smash. And I used to teach looking at this microphone. Steve, I said, because he had I was afraid, number one, he's going to fall off the stage. And number two, he banging his head against the microphone. I know we had to place him so he didn't bang his head against the microphone.
I read Marvin Gaye was the drummer
Yeah, he was a drummer.
On
Marvin
that
wanted to be
session.
everything. Marvin wanted to be a Johnny Mathis. He wanted to sing. He didn't want to sing no rock and roll. He didn't want to do. He was. Can see him right now playing the piano downstairs from where we lived and where Tri-Fi Records. He was always singing sweet songs. Everything else. He didn't want to be a rock and roller. He wanted to be a Johnny Mathis type singer. And I said, I don't think so. Okay, I got another story. I think I told you about Aretha. Okay, Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
You have some more questions?
Well, no, I just wanted to ask you if you promoted Fingertips, because it was such an unusual number one.
Yes.
Being a live recording.
Yes.
I mean, back in those days, that just didn't happen, that you had a live recording that would be number one.
Wasn't the Choker Campbell Orchestra backing him, or the Motown Orchestra?
We mean the Funk Brothers?
No. This was the touring.
Oh, touring. I can't.
Yeah, I think
I
it
can't
was.
remember.
Choker
Yeah, I
Campbell.
think it was.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah.
Because he's from here.
Well, when I started with Motown, have you been to the Motown Museum?
3 times.
Okay, where they have the studio. When
Right.
I started with Barry, it was a dirt floor.
Really?
Dirt floor. And they didn't have that piano that they have there now. They had an upright.
So tiny in there.
Upright. And the guy, I can't remember his name. Name's not. He was an engineer, and he had little spec glasses like this, and he loved the music, and he was the engineer, and he did everything else, and he worked for free. He just loved to be around it. Barry, when he's really made some big money, bought him a Morgan sports car. You know what a Morgan is? In
No.
England? Wood
Yeah.
frame, family house. I never forget, it had a leather strap across the bottom, and they said, "You deserve something because you never drew a paycheck from here." And he came to me and he said, "Mel, I want to show you something." So, they had a little glass thing, and there was, 3 wooden steps that are still there. They went down to the studio. He says, "I want to show you something." Go back in the studio. He said, "We're going from 4-track to 8-track. I said, "What? 4-track to 8-track? My God, you mean we want to have 8? We can record 8 people now on their own individual microphone?" I mean, I said, "Where's this technology going?"
Right.
Unbelievable. Today they don't even go in a studio. Okay.
Right.
So, yeah. And all the front. Now, Robert White, he was one of the guitar players for the
Right.
Funk Brothers. And he was a real good friend, too. Him and Marvin Gaye were very, very good friends. And they, the important thing, as even Barry said, when you put out a record, you got to grab that audience in the first 10 seconds. That's the important thing. So they would always rehearse something for the first 10 seconds. You have to grab them in the first 10 seconds, which turns out to be true, because most of it, I can honestly tell you, I didn't even know the words. I heard the sound. That's what the thing. And part of the things that what I did when I would hear a record, and I thought it had potential, part of the deal that I had, because I was so close with the R&B disc jockeys, I could go to them immediately, put it right on. If they say, "Mel, I wouldn't want to bring them a dog." Okay, I'm not bringing them, Angel Baby. I mean, this is R&B stuff. They would put it on there, and if they had record hops, which most of them did, or they'd be at the Greystone Ballroom or something else, they had big shows. I bring in the artists, and I would say to the manufacturer, "I get this thing to be a hit. You're going to get this played in a major market, Detroit." Remember, we were the 4th largest at that time. You'll know if you got a hit or not. You don't have to send out 10,000 disc jockey copies to some fee-smook town somewhere. You can do that later if you want to, but you'll know if you got a hit or not. I was telling them, I used to get the metal pressing plant thing. I would come to WAMM in Flint. I forgot the name of the guys there. They'd see me, Mel, promotion man from Motown. Are you kidding? I said, "Help me pick the A side and the B side." And those days, the phone would light up. They used to have "Make It or Break It." Okay, "Make It or Break It." Do you remember that? "Make It or Break It." And before, I would say to the manufacturers, "You better print a bunch of copies," because in those days, the record pressing plants like you had in Owasso, you had in Terre Haute, they want their money up front. You're not going to send you out a 30-day or a 90-day or 60-day billing. It was up front, because if it was a dog, you ain't going to pay your bill. Nobody. So they want it always up in front. So hopefully, as the word got around, if you want to get your record played in Detroit, and it's an R&B, okay, this is the guy you need to get a hold of. And at one time in 1963, I had 23 records in the top 100. I couldn't even believe it myself. I was really hot stuff, and that's the years that the R&B stuff really, R&B and blues, that's when it really started to hit.
What was your favorite?
Favorite groups?
Yeah, what was your favorite ones in that 23 there? Like,
Can I
what
ask
one?
a quick question
Sure.
before we move on? One of the Funk Brothers still plays at a club in Detroit. Correct?
Dennis Coffey.
Dennis
Dennis
Coffey,
Coffey,
yeah. I didn't even think he's still alive. I know Joe, he just died recently.
Right.
He just died. He was very successful business-wise. Joe was no dummy. He was a great guitarist. He played with Soupy Sales on that.
Yeah.
He just passed away. Dennis Coffey's still alive.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dennis was a funk brother a little bit later, though.
Yeah, later.
In the early
And
days, he
what's
was
Eddie
playing
Rabbit?
in the Royal Tones.
Eddie Rabbit? Not Eddie
Bob Babbitt.
Bob
Rabbit.
Babbitt.
Bob Babbitt.
Right, on drum, on bass.
Bass, yeah.
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 How did you?
You know how those guys run? They probably got $10 a session and all the scotch you could drink. It's true. They were there, too, for the love of it. They didn't make any money.
How did you connect with Harvey Fuqua after? Now, this would have been after you left Aurora, or
Aurora
closed?
was gone. They blew up Aurora. Some of the labels like Scepter and Juan, they went one place. VJ went to another, and everything else. And then I started doing stuff for Cosnet Distributing Company, that was right next door to Aurora, and they had Jubilee records. I can't remember some of the hits that I had at Jubilee, but I did brought in town Benny King, Stand By Me. I even did Acker Bill, Stranger on the Shore. I got that played also. Billy Maxted, I can't remember the name of the stuff. He was a big band stuff, but Stranger on the Shore. And it was the same routine. I get that played on the big radio station, you send them in. So I would take care of. So I always had people, and the manufacturers were all coming into Detroit, because if you went to WLS in Chicago, they look, we only play top 40. You got to get that record proven some other place, because we ain't going to play it. And if you're black, we ain't going to play it either. So you didn't get it on some of those stations, BZ in Boston, or they didn't get it played.
Did you ever go out of town and work it?
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah, by request.
When I was with Tri-Fi as one of my accounts, I did go out of town a lot. Yeah.
Just because they're like, you need to do this. You're
Oh
the guy
yeah,
for
I
the
did
road.
all the Apollo, and I did the Regal Theater in Baltimore, and I just told him the stories. I got locked up, coming back with the Spinners and Harvey Fuqua, and the red light started. We were speeding, and they took us through the gate and took us to Oberlin, Ohio. And those days you couldn't say, well, if you got a fine, put it on the Visa card. You had to get the money sent by Western Union, and oh my God. But yeah, I did travel quite a bit. Even South.
How long were you traveling? Like a year or 2 years, 3 years?
Back and forth, back and forth.
Over the years?
And then I had a family, and then it made it very difficult. And really, I kind of lost my ear, even though I had it for R&B, when everything changed, when the British invasion came about. Okay, I didn't hear this. I like the Beatles. My friend Bob Green from Keener 13, he introduced them. I think they were at Tiger Stadium, if I'm not mistaken. They actually came to Motown. They
were big fans of Motown.
Oh, big time. They put their suitcases down, told the driver, take us over to Motown. We want to go to Motown. They
Yeah.
came there.
Paul McCartney, I think, didn't he just redid the piano or have it done? The one that's in the studio? The grand piano,
It
yeah.
could be, but that
Yeah,
one
they-
came along. They had an upright, one of those
Yeah.
honky-tonk piano. We can
Oh,
have
this
that.
was the grand piano.
Oh, and that came later.
Paul, this was 3 or 4 years ago now.
Maybe.
Well, he was very much inspired by James Jamerson.
Right.
Yeah,
As a
James
bass
Jamerson,
player.
yes.
He started
and
out
if you
with
really
Washington
listen,
James
Willie.
Jamerson, besides being an alcoholic, but he was a great bass player.
yeah,
He was very, very unique. Really.
That hook
Yeah.
finger.
You know, and you listen to those Beatle records. I mean, McCartney's bass is really out front. I mean, you know, very, very distinctive. You know, and that's a big part of their sound. You know, is that bass guitar.
Well, the sound was the whole thing. Even when we did Runaway, because was the promotion man for Harry Balk,
yeah.
and on Big Top Records, you know, Harry's a super guy. Irv was more of the businessman, but he was a terrible gambler, and he lost all the money. Harry ended up with nothing. What a heartbreak. And when they did Runaway in New York, he took that box, whatever he did, and covered it up. He didn't want anybody to know where in the hell he got that sound from. You know that? Didn't want to get that sound. Now, I lived in Southfield, Michigan, and so did Del. His wife, and I think he had 3 kids. And I got a lot of stories, but some can't be told on air. But he had that very unusual. It's kind of a tragedy how things wound up with him.
Yeah,
He had
are you talking about the Musitron, that very unusual keyboard that Max Crook had?
Yes. Harry wrapped it up in a great big blanket and took it in. He didn't want anybody to hear it. Well, we had the Motown sound also. And part of it was the studio, you know. And originally the studio, they had the sound tiles. They were 8 crates. And we had old 9x12 rugs hanging that they nailed to the back of the garage behind the original first building. And they took from the Salvation Army, scrubbed them all up, let them dry in the sun, and they hung up. That was part of the Motown sound. Nobody had any money. Barry lived upstairs. Nobody had any money. Well, what made Barry, we won't discuss, but you need money. Like anything else in any other business, he was really, really underfunded and had a difficult time. And he didn't get zilch from Brunswick, which was part of Decca. He didn't get zilch on the Jackie Wilson stuff. I don't think he got $1,000 in total for all the stuff that he wrote.
Well, and he had to divide it.
Yeah.
3 ways.
3 ways.
And that was the breaking point between he and Jackie Wilson, is that he wanted the B-sides as well as the A-sides, because, you know, the B-side guy would get the same amount as the A-side.
Sure.
But he had the hits, but yet he had to divide it 3 ways. And like you say, he wasn't making much money.
Well, look at it, in the music business, nobody ever got a straight count. I used to say to him all the time, you're going to make your money doing personal appearances. You're not Johnny Mathison. You're not Frank Sinatra. And believe me, they got stiff too. Nobody got a straight count. That's just the way it was. I don't care who it was. Nobody. Unless you may be big, 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 you would get a straight count or they'd lose you. You know, it's not like you're, big time. And there was a lot of lawsuits at Motown. A lot of lawsuits, and most of the publishing went to Joblit. That's where the money is to be made in the long run.
When he sold the Motown, Barry Gordy, did he sell the publishing?
Yes.
Oh.
You got a lot of money for that.
A lot of money. Well, it's the same thing when Michael Jackson wanted to buy the Beatles publishing. Right. Mm-hmm. Okay? But Paul McCartney said, you're not going to buy it. He bought it. He bought probably the most successful artist in the music business was Paul McCartney. No ifs, ands, or buts, money-wise.
Did you go to Motown after Tri-Fi was purchased by Motown?
No, I didn't do that. They really didn't need me because they had a very strong hold. And one of Barry's, if you ask him today, he's 94, he's still alive. It's the biggest mistake was when we went to California. We should have stayed right there in Detroit.
Oh, I agree.
Because we were giants. When it's got too big for me even, and I was in other business stuff too. And then the British invasion came and all the other stuff, and a lot of the guys were like changing. Even though there was disc jockeys like Dave Schaefer's at CKLW, and then he's gone, and so many things were changing. I didn't have my heart and soul in it anymore, and I did a lot for, which I did have a love for, jazz, and I did a lot for Blue Note Records. I had them as clients for years and years. And I love it because Detroit was, the oldest jazz club in America is Baker's Keyboard Lounge and the Minor Key and all these great, great jazz places and all the ones that graduated from Cass Tech, and all these great jazz artists. And I loved them going to one week there was Miles Davis, John Coltrane, all playing at one time. I have a friend, he said, if I could sit and watch them for a week, you could take me in the back alley and shoot me. Okay, I would be thrilled just to sit there and listen. So Detroit had a little bit of everything.
Was that the Bluebird when they were booked?
Bluebird,
like
that closed down already, and then I heard they reopened it. Miles Davis, after his drug problem, came back to the Bluebird and was a house musician there, and got himself straightened around. But we had the Drome Lounge. Of course, we had Baker's Keyboard. We had the Minor Key. There was a lot of great jazz places. Cliff Bell's.
Did you drive them around when they got to town?
No, I didn't really. I think that's.
Or did you just go to the shows?
No, I went to the shows. I brought albums. I brought disc jockeys there because there wasn't that many radio stations that were playing jazz.
So you took them right to the show. Disc jockey to the show. It was the opposite way around of what you did with the R&B.
Yes.
But you pulled a pretty big jazz hit out of the hat there when you got Eddie Harris, or
it's true.
I guess you didn't get Eddie Harris, but you got VJ to release Exodus to Jazz
Correct.
As a 45.
Well,
I have that 45.
Really?
Oh, yes.
That's
I thought it was
amazing.
great.
I've got
The
it.
only
VJ.
jazz 45 I think I ever bought was
There
that
was
one.
2 records that I worked on that I pulled out of the hat. I listened to them when it was the day of the, the twist type thing. It was called Shake, Shake, Sherry. I had Epic Records come out with a single, and that was top 40. And Exodus to Jazz, I listened to that and listened to it, and I said, this should be a 45. So I called up Abner and I said, hey, can you do me a favor? I'm getting some requests for this. Can you issue this Exodus to Jazz by Eddie Harris? Cut it down, clean it up a little bit. And that was the 2 records that I pulled out of the hat, and they became top one. And remember, the segues and all everything else was music, for the Exodus to Jazz. And I'm very proud that I was involved in bringing that to fruition.
Well, yeah, that's what I loved about AM radio back in those days, is that it wasn't so tightly formatted that you could have Exodus by Eddie Harris, and you might have a Motown song, then you have a song by Elvis, you might hear something by Johnny Cash. It was just a real variety.
And the
on
instrumentals were a big part.
Oh, that's
a
right.
lot of a big part. Like Johnny and the Hurricanes, they had Red River Rock and other stuff, but they did, even afterwards, the disc jockeys would play segues between, commercials and changing from one jock to the next jock. So instrumentals were a very important part. Well, I would say the Marquis, what's the name of it?
Okay, let's see.
Not like
Marquis.
Yeah, what was the Marquis' big song?
Last night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or is that the Marquettes?
No, the Marquis. It was an instrumental.
Uh,
God, big. That's what started as the segue.
Out of Limits?
No, the
Oh.
Marquis.
Okay.
Well, yeah.
Can't think too
I
much.
got so many things going.
Yeah.
Yeah. But-
That was segued into be a big instrumental. There wasn't many of them, but if they were heard enough, people like them, they would buy them. I had one jazz album by Donald Byrd, Christo Redemptor, and I made those 2 little old guys. You would have never picked them out in a million years. Please come out with a single of that, because I think it'd be a hit. That was another one.
Is that the Harvey Mandel song?
Well, he's from Detroit, right? Donald Byrd.
Oh yeah, he went
Yeah.
to Cass Tech. We became taught at Columbia University. Hell of a nice guy. Listen, we had some greats. I mean, the great drummer
Elvin Jones.
Alvin Jones and his brother Nat, and a great Donald Byrd, the trombone player. I forgot his name. Too many names in here. I'm too old. But we had that great artist that came from Detroit area.
Did you ever run into Art Braggs? He was a promoter from Saginaw, but also did Idlewild, the Paradise Lounge. But he got most of his talent from the Flame Lounge.
Really?
In Detroit. And a lot, isn't that where Barry Gordy was a photographer?
No, Barry's sister, Gwen and Anna, were we used to go. People would sit, have drinks and everything else, and they come up and they take your picture. And then they run downstairs and they develop it and they put them in a little film. You know, that was Barry's sisters, Anna and Gwen. Yeah, they did. They had that concession.
Well, he was the Four Tops first manager.
Oh, really?
And he managed Della Reese.
What did I just say?
Yeah,
Della Reese needs to be in this big
Great
time
pop
blues.
singer.
Big Della Reese. She went to Wayne State University. She was a teacher, and she became an actress and had some big songs, big R&B songs. Yeah, Della Reese.
Well, and I want to go back to what we were talking about earlier. You had 23 in the top 100 there. What were your favorites? We didn't finish that. What were the ones that you thought, man, these are like?
Of course, I love the Temptations. Okay, and probably the favorite Temptation is Just My Imagination. And I mean, they had so many big hits. I loved, Smokey. Well, it really started off as the Miracles, and then Smokey was married to, I forget her name, but Claudette
Rogers.
And Claudette Rogers, but he's a real walking museum of. And I love the Miracles. In fact, I was saying when you picked a record to come out, you had an A side and a B side. So you wanted the A side, okay. The B side, you didn't want too good because then somebody would get two for the price of one. And the back side of the Miracles Shop Around is I Did You Wrong, the big hit that Linda Ronstadt and everybody has done it. It's even bigger than Shop Around. So they got two for the price of one.
And you got to take them around to the shows. Did they ever warm up? Well, not that they were lip syncing, I guess, so they didn't really have to warm up. You didn't get special shows
No,
in the car,
we did some live shows also. I tell you a classic story. We had a big disc jockey at WXYZ, Lee Allen on the horn. And we had a great big amusement park in Wall Lake called Wall Lake Amusement Park. And Lee was promoting Chuck Berry. He's going to have this great big show bringing in Chuck Berry. So for weeks and weeks, he would be playing tons of Chuck Berry music, promoting his show. And of course, he put the arm on me to bring another act in. So I think I brought him the Spinners, or it may have been the Contours. I can't even remember. And this is a classic story. And we're sitting in a room behind the stage. I don't remember I know it was Chuck Berry was there. And I brought my gig, and there was a couple of other ones. Those were freebies. Chuck Berry, he didn't work for free. Okay. And Chuck Berry said to Lee, he said, "You got my money?" He said, "Yeah, I got a cashier's check for your $3,600. He said, "I told you I want to get paid in cash." He said, "It's a cashier's check, as good as cash." He said, "Man, I'll give you a great show, but first you got to pay me in cash." And I said to him, "This is as good as cash. This is a cashier's check from a big bank." He said, "Man," he said, "I've been screwed more times than a Las Vegas hooker. I only take cash." I'll never forget that. And Lee ran like hell to the bank. I don't know how in the hell, but he got it cash to the bank that wrote it on it. He brought him the cash. He says, "I ain't going to play." All these kids are out there be screaming and yelling for Chuck Berry. And he said, "Pal," he said, "I've been screwed more times than a Las Vegas hooker."
That's funny.
What a great
I
line.
don't remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me take you back to a couple of your hit songs, and maybe you can kind of tell us a little bit of the story behind it. I have a copy of "Stay" by Maurice Williams and the Zodiacs. on
Al
a
Silver.
label that I had never seen anything else on, Herald Records. So tell us a little bit about that, Herald Records, and
Yeah, I
how
got
did
this
you get it
record.
out?
Al Silver was his name, from New York on 42nd Street. He sends me this record, and I call him up and I said, "Man, this is gonna be a hit, big hit." Same thing. I get this to be a hit. You send in the group, which he did. And then eventually, because he needed more distribution, he didn't have the distribution. He got a hold of Abner from VJ, and they took over Herald Records. And he was a funny guy. And he said, "Mel, I don't mind you call me. You can call me every day, but don't call me collect. Just call me. I am always here. Always here, because you know it's going to be more money when you call collect." I don't want to pay for the call to going to New York, but eventually I was smart enough to figure, as much money as you're going to make from this guy, you might as well pay for the phone call.
So when VJ distributed it, they didn't put it on the VJ label then,
No, it
right?
was on Herald.
Yeah, because my copy's on Herald.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
And I
like
don't think-
example 96 Tears,
Yeah.
when Cameo Parkway distributed it, it went on Cameo
And there's a
Parkway.
lot of what they call one hitters, they never came out with a second thing or whatever. I did once in a while by the Chimes. There's a Moon Out Tonight by the Caprice. This is early stuff. Most of the VJ records, Not Your Precious Love, I was a kid when that came out. Jerry Butler, He Will Break Your Heart, and Only the Strong Survive, and Make It Easy on Yourself. He was great entertainer. I brought him into
The Iceman.
The Iceman, yes, indeed.
the Iceman.
How about Ike and Tina Turner, A Fool in Love, which,
That was my
I mean,
first
wow.
record I worked on.
what an incredible R&B record that was.
Juggy Murray was the guy that owned Sue Records. And I told him the same story. I get this played. This is a hit. You got to bring them in. So, You're Just a Fool in Love was a big hit. I called him and said, "Mel, I'd love to bring them in, but they're working the Chitlin circuit. They working every single day. They need the money." Never met Tina Turner. Never met her.
Do you know what year that was? Because
Fool
I
in
just
Love, I think it was 1960.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess here, but I think it's 1960.
Yeah, 19.
because I just found this ad where Jackie Wilson played at the C&O Hall in Saginaw with the Ike and Tina Turner
Review.
Review
Right.
and Orchestra.
What year was that, Fred?
October 7th or 16th, 1960.
1960.
So they were probably touring behind.
Well,
A Fool in
I'm
Love.
trying to
Yeah.
write about it and figure out.
Well, Gladys Knight
how big
also
they were at the
recorded
time.
for Fire and Fury and for VJ, and ended up with Heard It on the Grapevine.
Yeah.
Not the Marvin Gaye that was
Well,
originally
yeah,
done
that was
by-
the first one.
Yeah, that was on 3 different labels. They always had somebody was suing or somebody was leaving or ended their contract or whatever it may be. So I never knew, and I had all 3 of them. So that was kind of unusual.
How about some of the blues artists like Jimmy Reed and Buster Brown?
Oh yeah.
How was that trying to promote that kind of music? Because you didn't hear much
Couldn't.
blues on the radio.
Jimmy Reed was never played on white radio stations. It was blues, but he did play on the R&B stations. And Buster Brown,
Well, he had a hit.
Issue Ain't My Baby, that made it into top 40, but not played too much on white
But
radio.
Fannie Mae
Fannie
also
Mae.
was even a
Fannie
bigger
Mae.
hit
Yeah,
for him,
Fannie
right?
Mae, right. That was. I'm really taxing my little brain. Never met either one of them. Wilbur Harrison, I did, Kansas City.
Oh, that was gigantic.
Yeah, and Bobby Marchand, and what was the name? What's on Your Mind, or what was the name?
Yeah,
of it?
there's something on
So-
your
something
mind.
on your mind. I can remember some of the things that I had here.
John Lee Hooker, eh?
Yeah, John Lee Hooker, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that actually got. I think that reached the top 40.
Oh, I told them the story, Lee Dorsey, right?
Oh, yeah.
I tell him I'll tell you
Lee,
the story.
Lee Dorsey, definitely
Right.
go through that one.
Bobby Robinson, he sends me this Lee Dorsey record, sitting here in La La waiting for my ya. So I call him, I said, here's the deal. Okay, you got to bring him in. He said, okay, Mel, you got it. Because I'd have a little girl, her name was Carol Joseph, I can still remember her name. I bought her a tape recorder. And if it was played on that, because they'd always be saying CKLW or something else, if it was played on that, I'd send them the tape saying, hey, I did my share. I'm getting it played. You're getting sales. You hear it on there. Now you send the guy in. Okay? So I asked him to send Lee Dorsey in. And he said, okay, you got a deal. So he gives me the one he's coming in playing. He's in Louisiana. Him and one other guy were the only two blacks on the airplane. And I want to come to him. I said, are you Lee Dorsey? He said, I am. I said, I'm Mel Kanar. I'm going to have to pick you up. He said, well, yeah, Bobby told me that you'd be picking me up. And he's got a shirt, a pair of pants, nice and clean. He's got a brown paper bag in his hand. So I said, okay, we'll go around and get your luggage. He says, man, that's my luggage. And I'm taking around to the radio stations, everything else. You know, those days you had mohair suits and sharkskin suits and skinny black, white on white shirts. I know I wore them with the cufflinks and all that other stuff. So, holy crap, I can't take him around looking like this. So across from the Astor Motel, where we kept most of the musicians, artists, there was a Schoen's Menswear. And I knew them real well because I bought a lot of my clothes from them too. I said, you got to do me a favor. You got to outfit this guy in the next 2 hours. Let's get him into a suit, get him some shoes, a pair of pants, everything else, a shirt, and a tie. Okay, I never forget that. He said, "That's it right here in a brown paper shop bag." Okay, like he's the old days from the shopping bags.
Wow.
So I've seen him in New Orleans many times.
Yeah,
and he's a real sharp dresser now.
Oh,
so
yeah. Well,
maybe you started it.
There it is.
There
It's
you
all
go.
on Mel.
Yeah, he didn't have any money when he first got it. As I said to Bobby Robinson, I got the bill. I'm going to send you, in those days, I had to put it in the mail. You were going to send, I'll scan it and send it to you. He said, well, tell me what the amount. You don't even have to say, you send me a money order or whatever it was. So it was a lot of good times.
That puts an end to part one with Mr. Mel Kanar here in the MMHP and the 989. We appreciate him coming up and giving us the backstory on how music got distributed and bands got put around there in Motown. He was a record dealer, a Motown feeler. He used to get the word out on the street, and we got part 2 coming up here in 2 weeks here in the MMHP and the 989. Thank you, Mel, for coming up. Talk to you all soon.
On behalf of our hosts, this podcast wouldn't be here without generosity of the Bay City Historical Museum, which hosts the Rock and Roll Legends Hall of Fame. We'd also like to thank all of our guests, and especially to the listeners. The MMHP is found at 989.network, or where all podcasts can be found. You can find updated information as well as Dr. J and Sir Fred's Picks of the Week on Facebook. Also on Facebook, check out Mr. Mike's Local Music Live series and Scott's Mid-Mitten 15 from Harvest Canteen Studios, featuring one-on-one interviews with Michigan music artists. You can connect with Scott on the web at scottbakermusic.com, Dr. J at michiganrockandrolllegends.com, Sir Fred at fredrife.com, and Mr. Mike on YouTube as Mr. BT1. That's MRBTEE and the number 1.
On behalf of us hosts, Dr. J, Sir Fred, Mr. Mike, and myself, we'd like to thank Mr. Eddie Switek, the voice of the MMHP and the 989.